o'clock for the thing.
So, but there's some, kind of like, I thought it would slope down to the river and there could be some issues.
It is 6.
Water?
Fill and stuff like that, and that's just what.
That's what he was talking about?
That's what.
For the flood?
Okay, I would like to call this work session to order Monday, September the 9th, 2024. We have about 4 things on the agenda for the work session, starting out with a report from our highway department regarding the stormwater problems that we've had numerous citizens speak to us about. And we'll start off with a presentation here from the highway department on stormwater problems.
And we're actually
John?
going to tag team that.
Sure.
So our stormwater program is run by multiple departments in the county,
Yeah.
community development, the highway department, parks, and then also some partners outside of county government. And so we're prepared to talk through the whole program. I sent a slide deck that's pretty extensive. So we can go as fast or as in detail as you like. We really didn't know the direction that you're seeking. So I'm going to let Rich Necco start, and we can get going through it. And if there's questions, feel free to interrupt, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah, I think what we're really looking for is just a general overall view of what, where we're at with the stormwater, problems when they do arise and what happens from there. Okay.
So I think there's some discussion that we'll hopefully pick up on, and we'll let Rich get started on. When we talk about stormwater, it's a broad category. A lot of the issues that Councilman Baker's been talking about is really flash flooding. And so if that's the focus, then we'll shift gears a little bit. But let's let Rich get started, and then we'll see if we're on the right track. If not, tell us to reset, and we'll move from there.
No problem. Rich?
So this is kind of where the stormwater water regulation comes from. The big act from the federal government was in 48, but the big one that regulates us right now came in 1972, commonly known as the Clean Water Act. Things weren't going really well. We weren't meeting our targets and whatnot. In 1986, they did a big study. 1987, they did basically a boost start to this program and created and started this National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, creating a permitting system for what we have to apply for today. So that's where all this regulation comes from. The target dates were for point source producers, and we'll talk about that a little bit, was in 1992. And for non-point source, which is what the county is, was in 2003, which is when we got our first permit for discharging stormwater. There's kind of a two-step approach here from the federal government and from the state government. They're looking at big polluters as far as point source, whereas we're talking about industrial facilities, commercial facilities, publicly owned wastewater treatment systems. We know what's being generated, the pollutants that are being generated. We know what's coming out of the pipe, and they can clean that up before they discharge it into the streams, and they have regulations about that. The problem that we have with our stormwater systems is we're getting a lot of this runoff from people's yards, streets. We don't know what's in the stormwater necessarily. And it picks up a lot of pollutants on its way into our storm sewer system. It does not go to a wastewater treatment system. We do not have any combined sewers like City of St. Louis. So all of ours are separate, and so those discharge directly into our streams. So we are a non-point source. And this NPDES, they took a two-phased approach. Phase one has these quantitative effluent limits. They have to test what's coming out of their pipe, and they have to make sure that they're not polluting our waters. They have limitations on what they can dump out. Non-point source, not so much. So we have a lot of qualitative stuff. We have to have a program. We don't measure what's coming out of the pipes necessarily. So what we're trying to do is create a program that keeps things out of our waste system, essentially. And that's sort of how we're regulated here, with the EPA on top from the federal government. They've delegated their authority to the State Department of Natural Resources. That's who we get our permit for directly to discharge our stormwater into the waters of the state. And then the Army Corps of Engineers also serves to facilitate the Clean Water Act, typically with wetlands and water quality. So as a phase two discharge permit, our requirements are quantitative, as I said, and we have to have a stormwater management program that addresses 6 minimum control measures to the maximum extent practicable. And that maximum extent practicable gives everyone heartache because we don't know exactly what it is. And so we submit our plan to the state, and the state reviews it, and they gave us their approval. So essentially that gives us comfort that we're doing things to the maximum extent practicable should we get audited by the EPA. And we have to address these 6 minimum control measures here: public education and outreach, public involvement and participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, which is more enforcement, construction site stormwater runoff, post-construction stormwater management, and new development and redevelopment. And then our own facilities have to be following these regulations. We can't be polluting from our own facilities. So that's what MCM6 is. And so we've created programs, especially with education and outreach. We're really big on that. Again, our strategy is to try to modify behavior, get people to understand the concept of watershed. What goes in the pipe, comes out the other end, is going to cause problems downstream. Just get people to understand that what goes in our storm sewer system doesn't go to a wastewater treatment plant. It goes directly into our streams. So we have programs to try and keep that out. What we have to do is come up with target audiences. We have 6 different ones in the county. We have target pollutants, specific target pollutants for each audience. And these are our audiences. We have over 40-something programs for outreach for our stormwater program. And this is how we reach agricultural stakeholders too, because we cannot regulate agricultural discharge. Or Soil and Water and Missouri University Extension help us out, partner with us a lot in that. Our second minimum control measure is to try to get people involved in the program, and this has more or less come down to public hearings and whatnot, and we followed all this. As we amend our stormwater management plan, as we are planning on doing later this year, we would have to go through more public hearings and let people know what's going on and try to get their involvement and their comment. MCM3 is something that we've just come a long way in getting caught up on. We have some new personnel, but we do have ordinances and regulations for what can go in our storm sewer system and what can't. And we also have to inspect all of our outfalls. We've committed to inspecting our priority areas for our outfalls that discharge into waters of the state once every other year, and our non-priority once every 5 years. We're a little behind, but we're getting caught up. And these are our priority areas. Once we get through our base inspections, we'll be able to prioritize which outfalls we have more problems with and which water courses we have more problems with. We also have mechanisms for regulating construction site runoff. We've been doing this since 1992. This is probably the strength of our program, doing it for a long time. Again, what we just did in 2021 was we came up with some new stormwater regulations and water quality and addressed water quality and some more stormwater detention. So these are all the regulations we use to address post-development. And we have to ensure that these facilities last. We have to ensure that these facilities are being maintained. So we have staff that periodically inspects all of these facilities.
Richard,
Yeah.
on that runoff, we seem to have a lot of problems with when it's in O'Fallon or Winsville or wherever it may be, and they're doing a development, and all the runoffs running in the unincorporated county. And we've been going back and forth on this one in that Hopewell Road facility. How are we gonna be able to clean, do you know what I'm talking about at Hopewell? I think Mike got another, we get emails all the time where dirt's all over the road and mud and stuff like that. And I think you guys went out there a couple weeks ago for soil erosion control, but it's not, from what I understand, it's not necessarily county, it's O'Fallon, and it's all.
There's actually 2 developments going on there. One's in the county, but the bigger residential developments in O'Fallon, yeah.
And so it's just a constant problem.
So at least at a staff level, we all coordinate. We know each other. We all coordinate. We can talk to each other. We talk through it, and that's how we tried to address that problem.
Did they address that problem
Yeah.
that you're aware of?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. And O'Fallon got them to do some more sediment control and whatnot, and got them to clean up the streets, so, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But that is a problem, recognizing, number one, whose problem is it, and how do we get that addressed? But at a staff level, like I said, we have a lot of interaction with each other. We even have quarterly roundtable meetings with the other MS4, so we're always talking with each other. Like I said, MCM6 is about county operations, and we have a lot of facilities. We have 6 facilities that are industrial or permitted, so those are really phase 1 dischargers. The airport and 5 of the county O&M facilities. And the rest of the facilities, we have training for staff. We've been doing RISE training, developing RISE training, and then the individual facilities have their own stormwater management plans that the foremen go through with their training. But these are all the things that we have to address in our plan, or these facilities have to address. But basically just good housekeeping in all your own facilities, how you wash your vehicles, how you store things, fueling. The biggest change in the permit this year, and it's a 5-year permit, was that we had to be very clear, specific, and measurable. All of our program elements and our measurable goals had to tie in to show how you're addressing water quality. How is it affecting water quality? One of the things we put in there is we're gonna hand out 500 of these pamphlets every year. Well, that's not good enough anymore. We want to see the effect of that 500 handouts. So did those just get thrown in the trash, or did that take people to a website, or did that actually get our water cleaned up in an area? We also try to use a lot of GPS to see where we have problems so that we can target that education better.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, how much time did you allow for the stormwater topic? We got 3 topics, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
The reason I'm asking is because I know Tim was the one, and I don't think this is what we wanted. We don't want to review over this.
I wasn't really planning on this to talk about water quality and
Sure.
BMPs and SWIP and all that. I'm here, really want to hear to talk about the overall problems we have in this county with stormwater, not the permitting process or who regulates it, but, I've got a lot of problems, and I'm not sure about the rest of the members here on council, but, and a lot of the people in these other districts have cities that control it. I have a large unincorporated area that we have problems in, and there's no recourse. And so really the intent of this discussion was I would like to get a ballot measure to take some of the Prop P money and put it towards addressing stormwater on a comprehensive basis in the county. So that's what I'm hoping we were going to talk about today, so.
Let me get to kind of how we deal with some of our problems now. This is all for new development here. So for existing redevelopment, like I said, we do a lot of education and outreach. We have our waste collection facilities, recycling facilities. We're trying to get people to keep the waste stream out of our system. And when we do have problems, we do have outreach. I mean, we have technical assistance, and I can give you some of our cards. We have Stream Care Guide that we've developed that's got a lot of information in it. It's also got a lot of resources in it for professionals to look at. So that's a really good resource that we give to people.
Richard,
we also have partners.
I think what we're talking about here, I appreciate you putting this presentation together, but the whole intent of this conversation, as far as I know, and Mr. Baker,
Right.
is we got deeper concerns. And this stuff is good. I'm not criticizing, but we have to talk about the subdivision where those people come in and it's flooding, their houses are being flooded, the heritage with the people's houses falling into creeks. That's the concerns. It's not this stuff. This stuff, you guys are doing what you can do, but Tim, isn't that what I understand?
No, that's 100%, that's absolutely. I mean, and I've repeated this for the past 2 years since I've decided to run for council. I used to work for St. Louis County, and I like to think we're a better county than St. Louis County, but we're missing the boat on stormwater. And I know they have an MSD, but before they had MSD, St. Louis County took it upon themselves to address these type of problems that I have in my district, and I'm pretty sure that these folks have it. So I'm looking for an outlet. How do we address this? And not that it's all private issues that we can't do anything. I'm not accepting that. I think we need to do something. And my options are, and I'd like the council to discuss using either the marijuana tax for that, or take some of the Prop P. I understand we got $28 million last year in the Prop P tax, which is great. We can afford a $5.6 million splash pad. And I think if we put it to the voters and ask what the voters would want, that they would probably rather have their house not be flooded than a splash pad, which I think is great. But that's what I'd like to talk about. How do we go from where we are now to start addressing some of these issues that I have in my district? So,
If it may,
Go ahead.
Councilman
Mr.
Baker,
Swanson.
one thing that could be addressed with this is a neighborhood improvement district, a NID tax that would be for that exact area. So when we're looking at the greater St. Charles County, we're not all paying into one issue in one area. The NID could be voted on by the public, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, with executive staff
Oh, that's
over there.
good. Okay.
And then they could approve that, and that could be a tax just for those residents within that area to fix the problem that they specifically have. Because we do have a very diverse area of districts, but a NID could be an option to help you over.
well, I understand. NID is not my first choice. I mean, I think we got to look at other options, and I
Well,
think.
it's a tax, and you were talking about other taxes that are out there between the hard tax that comes in, the marijuana tax. This is just another type of tax or assessment that's given. John?
Yes, John.
So, I appreciate Tim's insight on this and his work. He's definitely met with a lot of property owners and identified some issues that we weren't aware of and some that we were. On the flooding and those issues, there's a thing of distinction that we're, at least when you look at the various cities in St. Charles County and the programs that they have in place and how they compare to what we're doing. And the key piece that all of the cities focus on is they need to be public improvements. So if you're going to use public tax dollars, it's either the maintenance or construction of public infrastructure. So some of these backyard issues along natural water courses, we're not alone in not dealing with those. And that's common in all of our cities that have even taxes for that. They're not working within those backyards. They're requiring that the homeowners provide easements, and then the work can be conducted, similar to what we're doing with the Heritage, which John Lyons had some slides to kind of go through what's happening in Heritage. So if you're using that public dollars, it's got to be a public improvement. So I don't know if we're really to the point that we have a funding issue, that we need to be looking and talking about the marijuana tax or the use tax. It's really the category that the project is, and whether we as a county government can invest in fixing that problem. And there seems to be some confusion about that amongst the council.
Well, just an overall question, how did St. Louis County overcome that problem in 1990 when they decided that they were going to take, I mean, they did backyard problems, and backyard stormwater problems, they took it upon themselves to address it. And I'm sure the law probably didn't change since then.
Yeah, so I'm not as familiar with St. Louis County as what others may be, but we did do a look and polled each of the cities within St. Charles County to look at what their stormwater programs were, including the city of St. Peters, which really has the kind of one of the more aggressive or the more comprehensive stormwater program. Their very first step, their first step is doing watershed study. And then once identify the problem, then it's working with the property owners to dedicate ground and easements so that they can construct improvements within public ground. And that's the approach that we're taking with Heritage, and we are looking at 3 watersheds within St. Charles County in addition, based upon the concerns of the council and trying to put together a plan over time. Some of these issues have been around for decades. We're not going to resolve them in the course of weeks. And so there's the fundamental question that I keep struggling with is, and it seems like we're trying to jump to, is, well, is there a funding problem with this issue? I don't know if there is. I mean, you look at the amount of dollars that are being spent by the cities in each one of these areas, it's a couple $1 million, and the work's being done in public right-of-way. And
That's not always true, John. I mean, explain the creek project over on Fifth Street behind Time Center Apartments. City of St. Charles just redid the creek. They stabilized it. They put in biostabilization, they did some culvert repairs, and upstream from that is county residents on the exact same creek, and we tell them that we can't do anything? I mean, I don't understand that. I mean, and I'm asking, what am I missing? Whereas this part of the creek, the city takes it and does it. Upstream, it's county, it's your problem. It's a private issue.
so my understanding, talking with the city of St. Charles, that work was done under public easements.
Okay,
So it was, again, the
Because we
expenditure of
chose
public
not to get
dollars
public
for a
easements.
public improvement.
That changed, because there's a public easement, that changes the fact that the water is in that creek is public and not private?
No, it's the expenditure of the government dollars for a public improvement versus a private improvement. We can't spend public county tax dollars on improving an individual's property. I mean, that's doing work on private
But
property.
you just said St. Peter's is getting easements, though.
Right, so if
So
you get, if you.
that's what we would do. I mean, that's what the county would do. So we're in the same situation that the St. Peter's is in, just that we're not doing anything about it.
Well, I don't know if that's true. Since Heritage Project, which is funded through ARPA funds that we received through the state through a appropriation that Representative Chris Finelli got, we did a comprehensive watershed study, identified that there was a need to extend and do some extension of public storm sewers. And we're seeking that the homeowners donate the easements needed for that public storm sewer, and then we're planning on constructing those extensions. Now, could we do that same type of things on some of these other locations? Sure. That's why we're looking at, there are 3 other watersheds that are identified that have been known problems. One being O'Fallon Hill subdivision, the other being what we call Trip 4, which is off of by St. Peter's Howell Road. And the third was Crystal Springs, which is there by the convention center. Those areas are old areas of unincorporated development that have runoff issues. That would be good to use some funds, and we're proposing using, again, ARPA funds for those watershed studies. And once we know what the problems are and we can look at solutions, then we look at how we fund it.
So you said we didn't have a funding problem, but we do if we have these problems that we haven't addressed yet. Is that fair?
I said we don't know what the funding problem is. We don't know the magnitude of the problem. But if it's a public improvement, taking stormwater from our roadways, like Greensboro Drive that we're looking at, where the road is actually flooding, or where we're looking at the situation that you brought up on,
Bluffview, Starlight.
not Starlight, was the other one that had some flooding. Cinnamon Hill, with the gentleman that came in and spoke, where you had the street flooding that then backed up into his house. You know, those are public improvements, infrastructure improvements, whether that's be additional inlets or those type things, and maybe in combination with some private work of reestablishing overland flow. But there's a public improvement piece of that, which we have the draining of the street that we can address with our road and bridge tax.
Well, when I brought this up to you a month ago, your suggestion was to address the stormwater problem by taking it out of slab repair, and I don't want to do that. What I'd like to do, and the purpose for this meeting, is to sit and present it to the voters, to let them decide if they want to use some of the use tax or the marijuana tax, that's for us, how to decide we want to do it, for stormwater problems. And that's the real crux of, I mean, it's, take it out of our hands, take it out of your administration's hands, let the public decide if they want to do it. Because if they don't, then I can move on from this topic, because I've been dealing with this for 2 years, and it's hard for me to say, well, St. Louis County used to do it, St. Charles City does it, St. Peter's does it, but you live in the unincorporated area, so you're out of luck. And I just think that's short-sighted when we have. Keep using it, the $5.8 million splash pad. Great. But if I put it to the voters, I bet you the voters would rather have their house not flooded. And that's the intent of what I want to do, is get it to the voters, let them decide how or if they want to address this.
Mr., yeah, you're fine. Mr.
So I have a question. I understand you want to talk about funding. From what I'm hearing you say, Tim, you have a good idea of what you want fixed in your district, of what you see as the problem. But it sounds like we don't have an agreement on what the problem is. That's point one that I'm asking. Do we have an agreement on what the problem is at this point?
Which
We don't have
Hang on.
We don't have a full scope of what the need is within the county.
Okay.
And there is limited resources. I mean, the highway department every year debates on how many slabs they're gonna remove versus how much curb they're gonna replace, how much asphalt they're gonna do, and how much stormwater repair work they're gonna do. That's part of balancing the budget. Do they have adequate money to deliver, every one of these issues to the, exceptional service? No. But if you go throughout pretty much every one of our county departments, can we hit where we'd like to be if we had unlimited funding in any one of our departments? Probably the answer is pretty similar. No, we cannot deliver all the services we'd like to deliver with our budget, our limitations. This is one issue that's very similar. If we can get, is money an issue? Sure. How much money do we need? I don't know.
And that would be, so with all due respect, before I would go to the voters for anything, I would want to understand the scope of the problem that you're trying to fix. And so far, from what I'm understanding, we don't understand, or at least we don't have a monetary total on what the scope of the problem is. And I would suggest, do whatever you want, but I would suggest, before we go anywhere looking for anything, let's do some sort of study. And I don't know if we can get money from East West Gateway to be a part of that, or from some other source with Missouri Department of Natural Resources or the Corps. There's got to be some money available to do a stormwater study to where we can understand the true scope of the problem. Because before I'm going to ask anybody to pony up any money for anything, I want to understand what's the scope of the problem, so we really understand it, and then we can go back and start fixing that. I appreciate the NID, and I think that's a good start, especially for an area that is settled in that area. I don't know that every district in the county has this issue. Maybe we do.
Then they vote against it. It's simple.
Okay.
I mean,
I still think you're way ahead.
Well, no,
on
because,
trying to do the funding, because you're saying, I want part of this money to go fund this. Great. What are you fixing? We don't even have an agreement yet on what we're fixing. And then once you have an agreement of, okay, here are all the identified issues that we see as water runoff in the county. If we agree that these are the issues that we've identified, now we can look at prioritizing what are the most urgent things that you have. If somebody's house is getting flooded, to me, that would move pretty high up on this is pretty damn urgent to get fixed, right?
I agree.
So we identify those and we start looking at what are the funding sources that we need to identify those. What do we need in terms of moving it from a private easement to a public easement to where now we can use our funds to be able to fix it? Right now, you could identify, here are the issues that are going on. I mean, before you even came on the council, you and I went and met with somebody who was in my district to look at a water problem that they were having running through. And John both came out and looked at that, and that's a natural swell that was operating the way that it should have. However, they had built some stuff around the drain and was clogging the drain. And we told them, hey, if this gets clogged, call us and Highway will come out and clean that out and we'll keep the water running. If we would have done what the homeowner wanted done, we would have flooded everybody south of them. So we would have made the problem worse by doing the fix that they wanted. So I personally would like to see if we can get our arms around the scope of the issue, understand what that is, look at a prioritization of fixing the most immediate ones, and then we look at what are our funding sources that we have, what can we fix now, what do we need possibly to go to the voters or somewhere else to get a grant or something like that to go fix it. That would be my ask for
Fair.
all of this, rather than just go straight to a ballot issue.
Fair enough, but I mean, we'd met, and Rich, John, and I think Mike was there. We met, and we were gonna have, by September 1st, an analysis of the three big, I think it was 3 or 4 big stormwater problems. And we're now September, 9th or 10th? And so I was hoping that we were going to first understand what the issues are, and then, again, talk about how we go from where we are now, where a lot of the problems that I have in my district is because of bad design by engineers, is developers not adding enough inlets, and bad review by the county when we reviewed and permitted these subdivisions. They should have never been approved, but we did. The county approved it, and so now these folks have stormwater problems. And that's why I'm saying it's not a private issue, it's a public issue, where we as a county approve these shoddy plans with bad stormwater control, and we've got drainage studies that now we're having to deal with 30, 40 years later. And we just need a solution.
Okay, John?
And I appreciate that Tim is trying to narrow the category of where this problems are occurring. I would disagree that it's due to shoddy plans or poor review by the county. I think what Rich's first slide was intended to do was show that the nature that the stormwater regulation process has changed, and the developments that have occurred since we've gone to the national MPES process of 2003 was, I think, the date of it. The development that's occurred after that time frame aren't taking consideration these stormwater measures, and that's the current design, and you see less issues in those areas. The homeowner on Cinnamon Hill and Greensboro and a lot of these are pre-2000 developments. And those are the areas that Tim has a high priority, a high concentration of those in his district. And those are we've been tracking for the last 2 years, Tim, that you've been here. I mean, every time you provide a concern, or any of the councilmen do, and I think we had about 50 or 58 of those total. A lot of those have been resolved. There's the 3 that we've talked about. John Lyons is prepared to talk about the solutions there. We think that we can actually, the one on Cinnamon Hill and Greensboro and Starlight, have solutions that can be implemented by the end of the year within our existing funding means. But those are just one-offs. That's not a program. That's addressing citizen concerns based upon basically the squeaky wheel mentality. Councilman Hammond a few years ago challenged us to basically start a proactive approach, and that's what we've done. John Lyons and his team is now out there cameraing all the storm lines to see where there are problems. I think we got about 1 million linear feet of storm pipe in the ground. We're about a third of the way through of the program of actually being able to identify where we have pipes that are broken. That's because of an effort that they led about 2 years ago. Rich and his folks are, as he mentioned, inspect every one of our outfalls once, at a minimum, every 5 years. Those are new efforts that we're taking on that we didn't do in the past. So I don't know how effective some of these new programs and strategies that we're trying to put in place will be over the long term, or if we have enough money based upon our resources to address those needs in a reasonable time frame. But we're just getting started on some of these issues. I think when we look back through the list of concerns and the known issues, I think it doesn't appear to be a major list. I mean, what we have is about 50 issues. We do have about, I can't remember, 70 homes identified that are in floodway along the inland creeks. They are houses that do have repetitive losses, that they've been broken up into, it's on the slide presentation, there are 3 categories: high priority, medium, and low. That is a fairly significant amount of money to try to figure out how to fund those buyouts. There's 12 high priority homes that are basically within a floodway that will get reoccurring repetitive loss due to flash flooding. There's 19 in the medium and there's 43 in the low, for a total of $13 million worth of homes that may need to be bought out. We're not going to be able to find a pipe that's big enough or overland flow that's going to be able to correct that situation.
So if there's not a funding issue, can we address those?
That would be one issue that we look at, was that, especially that high priority one. Community development has a list. They apply for the federal grants to get that. One that was on that list was Avon, Tim, in your district, I think 624 Avon. They were able to secure funding and that home will be purchased. And so those things are part of our program of knowing where these issues are, tracking them, monitoring them, seeking funding as we can, so we can address these issues.
So, Mike, looks like that answers your question about what you asked about how much. There it is, right there.
Okay,
But that's
Yeah,
one component of a stormwater program. That's
Yeah.
the buyout piece of it. But we're working on that one house at a time.
yeah. Okay,
I think though, on this problem you got, Tim, is, I don't know if I have problems in.
You
in
don't,
my-
you probably don't. Matt
Probably don't,
doesn't.
no, it's rural, and
Nancy
I wouldn't
probably
be in
doesn't.
favor of a surtax at all, but I understand what you're trying to do, and I respect that, but, I think maybe you need to get with John and them and come up with a plan and present it, to whatever, you know, or
I
something.
think
Well, okay.
Yeah, I think
sorry.
the issue here is, first of all, identifying how big the problem is. Second of all, is the problem too big to fund with the present funding sources that we have? And if the answer is, yeah, the problem's bigger than the present funding source, then we need to find another funding source, or, grants, NIDS, a lot of different things. So I think that would be the step. Where are we at? And how much money are we already allocating to this? And the next step, is that enough? Would you agree there, Tim?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you fund it over 100 years, you can address all, I'm sure, everything. And that's what the issue is. These people's houses flood a couple times a year, and we gotta do something. And the reason for this, and I'm not sure how this agenda got so crowded for 45 minutes, but the intent is for us to sit here and talk about possible ballot issue, let the voters decide if they want to use some of this use tax or if they want to use the marijuana tax to address stormwater.
Okay, well, to address that, and then this is why I put this in, and I don't want to skip over the highway department staffing thing, but I'd like to have a report, just a quick report on the marijuana tax revenue, okay? Because that always seems to be coming up. Tim obviously brought it up. It's been brought up before. Where we're at on that, how much, okay, and whether we're guaranteed to get that money or not. So,
Are you wanting to skip to that? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, why don't we skip to
Well,
that? and then
we got 6 minutes, and Terry, can we?
No, we can get our closed session done in 10 minutes, so we've got about 12 minutes if we stretch it a little bit. Okay.
I mean, I tell you, we used to have more work sessions, we probably need to start doing a little bit more.
I'd like to have another work session for these 4 items, because we don't have enough time.
Okay, But let's get this one out of the way here. Just explain to us real quick.
Marijuana.
How much money? Go.
Okay, a year ago when the marijuana tax was kicking off, collection started October 1st of last year. We had no idea how much we were going to collect. The formula that some of the cities were using was that for every location, there would be, each location would generate about $150,000 worth of revenue.
Annually.
And annually, correct. We have 15 locations in the county, so roughly, if that benchmark, and, you know, we had no way of knowing if that was reliable or not, if that came true, we would generate about $1.8 million a year in marijuana sales tax. When we did the '24 budget, we didn't want to bet the farm on the fact that, you know, all these what-ifs out there. So we budgeted $800,000 in the '24 budget going into the general fund for marijuana sales tax. So we are in September now. We have sales tax numbers through July of 2024. The annual amounts have pretty well normalized, somewhere in that $150,000 a month for us, which would generate about $1.8 million if the current trends hold through the end of the year. So right now, we're looking at about $1.8 million that we could see. We're 7/12 of the way there.
Now, explain to me and to all of us why we technically can't spend that money.
Why we can't spend it is because it's not in the budget. We have $800,000 in the budget that has been appropriated.
And also, there is a lawsuit.
lawsuit
That's what I
Correct.
that's what I was kind of
Briefs were filed
referring to.
last Friday.
What's that now?
The briefs by the county were filed last Friday, I believe, Thursday or Friday.
Friday afternoon.
So we're confident that we're going to win this lawsuit, but if we didn't, then that money would not be coming in. Is that correct?
I don't know what the provision would be if we lost. Would we have to repay that money at this point in time? I don't know who we would repay it to.
That's not my understanding.
You don't want to say.
We would not.
It's the future collection.
It would be cease and desist at that point, so.
But the money is now going into the budget, though, isn't it? I mean, because when I asked.
Going into the general fund
Yeah, it's
now.
going, and that's not being used to pay salaries or whatever?
It's going into the general fund. It does not have, $800,000 of the $1.8 million has obligation against it. The other $1 million, if we collect that, is unobligated revenue that has no real budgeted purpose yet. But I just want to caution everybody that, yeah, okay, $1.8 million sounds great, and Tim, I understand what you want to do. But the general fund is where everything flows. We have no general fund property tax. We are totally reliant on sales tax. And to take every new nickel and dime you collect in one way or another and start appropriating it here and obligating it there puts the general fund at risk. And you really have to be careful about what you obligate and how long you obligate it. So I would caution you about obligating funds at the outset here, out of the general fund. You know, we've been in a position where ARPA funding has helped us out as a county, but that ARPA money has to be spent by December of 2026. It's largely obligated at this point, and before you start looking at general fund sources for this revenue, I think you really need to think about the pressures that are going to be on the general fund once ARPA runs out. We've got 14 new SROs in the schools, and are we going to continue those? There are a lot of things that obligate this money very quickly and then some once ARPA is over. So be careful about that.
And two
thank you.
detectives and a prosecutor and.
Yeah, correct.
How is our general sales tax as the last caller?
I think general sales tax right now is up like 6.9%. I think Tracy shared at the staff meeting year to date. We're up about 6.9%. I think we budgeted 3%. So we're slightly ahead at this point.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. Samantha, I'm sorry to rush you, but one of the things was, a report just where, Mr. Brazel especially brought this up, Highway Department staffing shortages in general, okay?
All right, so as you know, we're always watching what's happening in the markets out there. As you may recall, we analyze our positions in a 3-year cycle, so if a position's midpoint drops below 90% in their respective market, we reclassify them to the higher pay grade. In addition, if a position falls between 90% and 93% in their pay market, we don't reclassify them, but we do put them on a watch list. So as you can see, or as you may know, several of the positions you're having before you tonight, those are on watch lists. They were on watch lists. This year, we are going to go ahead and move them because they did fall below 90%, so that's why they're before you tonight. I didn't know exactly what questions you had about the highway department. I know there was some concern about the starting pay. The positions in the street maintenance worker 2 positions are now at a C4, which will be $22.68 an hour. Street maintenance worker 3 is a C5, which would be at $24.38 an hour. I wasn't sure, you asked about vacancies. They have 126 positions. They have 15 vacancies right now. Majority of them are street maintenance workers.
So 15 vacancies
For the entire department.
for the highway department? Okay, I wasn't told that. It was much more than that, but I was just concerned because we're not mowing weeds on the county roads, and I was told we don't have the staff to do that, so. The concern is, how many other departments are shy? Are they all understaffed, like the other departments, police department?
Police department's pretty much 100% staffed.
They're 8 under, aren't they? That's what I was told, the chief told me, they're 8 under.
No,
Okay,
nope, they're pretty much 100% staffed.
They had 2, Joe, and I think they're hiring new recruits and sending them to the academy, so that would bring them up.
okay. On the concern I had with the highway department, that's what brought my attention to it, and I don't know how many other departments are low, but I was told they were paying them $18 an hour, but if you shifted it to 22 and we're 15 low, are we gonna have enough staff, or maybe I asked John this, if we stay at 15 below, are we gonna have enough staff to plow the streets when we have a snowstorm and stuff like that that's really necessary? Because those are the things we need to be prepared for. So if you need to, my point is, if you're paying a guy $22 an hour to shovel asphalt or drive any kind of equipment, that's way too low.
Well, I will say that it's 15 for the entire department, so those are not all street maintenance workers.
So do we have a plan to get the staffing up higher? And do we have a plan to get the staffing up higher if there's other departments that are suffering as well? This is not any kind of criticism. I just want to make sure that we're covered, because I can tell you this, in today's environment, it's a lot harder to get employees. I don't know where they all went, but it's a lot harder to get employees. And so we have to maybe reshift or rethink or pivot in a direction where we're going to be able to staff our county. And people are concerned, oh, you're paying them more money. Well, you either pay them more money or you don't have the help. It's one or the other.
Right.
And not having the help is not a solution.
And Joe, can I just mention that the departments all are informed of the fact that if they need to pay more to bring somebody with some experience on board, they work regularly with HR, and we are regularly granting advanced starting salaries because people have the skills or the already existing experience at another place. So when she says this may be the starting, it's not necessarily what we're paying when they onboard. And that occasionally does then cause a compression issue in the department, and they raise that, and we're dealing with that.
No, I realize there's always a ripple effect in everything you do. I get that. I just was concerned because, out in the rural area, when you're not mowing the roads, like the rural roads, the problem is that it's literally 4 or 5 foot tall, and a deer will jump right out in front of you, especially people on a motorcycle. It's very dangerous, and so that's why it's important. And so you know, you got safety concerns, and so people were complaining, and I noticed it too, and so you gotta mow the rural routes, you have
see
to.
that same
I'm
thing
sure
on the
the other ones
interstates.
gotta be mowed too, but mostly the rural routes.
So we do other things as well, like we post positions from midpoint to max too, depending on the position, if that helps bring it in. HR does a lot of things, like we partner with local universities to bring in people. We partner with academies for law enforcement. We partner with the departments for specific jobs, so if it works better, if they're looking for something like engineers, we'll partner with schools that have engineers to bring people in. We do career fairs. There's a lot of different things that HR is taking part in to bring in people, not just pay-wise, but a lot of different things to bring them in as well.
And so how many highway employees are there, 50? I mean, how many?
For the total department, for the whole thing, 126.
126, okay, so you're 15, so you're not even 10%, so you're 8% shy, isn't real too bad,
More
but,
than 10%.
so, I was just concerned about it, because are we gonna be able to mow the grass, John, do you know, or?
I mean, we're working on it. So the 50 positions were down, I think, 2 of them, all but 2 are street maintenance workers. And I think Southern is still down about half their shed.
Is engineering the problem, trying to find engineers?
We have been having that problem for a long time. We recently hired an engineer and we've extended an offer to another one that acts like they're gonna accept, but they haven't gotten back to us. So if that goes through, then we'll be down 1 engineer instead of the 3 that we've been down for 2 years. So that should be improving. The starting salaries and maybe the confusion with the $18, that was street maintenance worker 1. We're advertising street maintenance worker 2 positions, that's why.
But the other thing is, John, is when you told me that, I put it on Facebook to try to get some employees, and it wasn't, I was told it wasn't even on our website for these job positions, and so that's what was a little confusing.
Which, as far as I know, it's always been out there.
It's always been on there, and we refresh it every Friday to make it at the top of the list.
Yeah, so I don't know why they weren't seeing it on the website, because I even checked that myself and
Okay,
it was out there.
yeah,
so.
I don't know,
But,
I think
yeah,
me and
so-
John Greifus talked about that.
So the
as well.
southern shed, I think it has maybe 12 employees, off the top of my head, some of those are supervisors. I think right now they're down to about 7. So it just happens to be one of those sheds where,
Which shed is that?
that's the one
Down
that's
where
down by
Joe's
New
at.
Melly, in Joe's district.
I would just say, in my opinion, it's the director's job to tell us, and I know you may not get this from the leadership, but it's your job to tell us why you're understaffed, and in fact, if it's because of the hourly rate, you need to tell us that at budget. If that's the truth, I don't know. I'm just saying that if you're down 15 people, I was told 32 from the first time.
Well, actually, so when, that was actually true when I told it to you. We've hired a lot of people
In the last 2 weeks, you did?
We have been, I mean, we've always been holding interviews, but surprisingly, we have gotten a lot of people accepting our offers. But we've also been trying to increase how much we've been giving them, advanced starting salary wise.
So in the last 2 weeks, you hired 20 people?
I think it's been more like 3, but yeah, we've
Wow.
been
Okay.
really kicking it into gear here these last few weeks.
Well, maybe the Facebook
Yes,
activity helped.
Okay.
I don't know, but we're trying.
I appreciate you folks. I know we're being rushed a little bit, but I think we can get our closed session in. Okay, so Nino.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to State Statute 610.0212.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Do we have roll call or we just,
Yeah.
I think we need a roll call vote, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Baker?
Yes.
We are going into
Just tell them. We can tell them.
All right, we need to make a motion here to come out of closed session.
So moved?
Okay, do I have a second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, we are now going to begin the regular St. Charles County Council meeting of Monday, September the 9th. We will begin the meeting with a invocation that Councilman Elam will give, and then that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, also led by Mr. Elam.
Okay. I get the whole show. Would you please stand? Let's pray. Father, we just come before you right now just asking for your wisdom, your guidance as we take up these matters before us. We thank you for all the blessings that you continue to give us that many times we're just let go by. I pray that at some point today and some point this week, you'll convict our hearts to just be mindful of where we live and to be grateful for the things that we have, and to not compare ourselves with what others have, but just be grateful for the opportunities that you give us to live in this land, to live in this county, and to take advantage of the freedoms that you give us. We just pray your grace and your wisdom as we go throughout this meeting tonight, that your will be done. And we ask all this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Councilman Swanson. Councilman Brazel.
Here.
Councilman Elam.
Here.
Councilman Hollander.
Here.
Councilman Hammond.
Here.
Councilwoman Schneider. Here. Councilman Baker.
Here.
We begin tonight's meeting with several conditional use permits, beginning with bill number 5327. Usually we begin this with Mr. Jared Young, is that correct?
Yes.
And
I will
swear him in, and we will,
I will read the bill.
okay.
Bill number 5327, requested by Mike Hurlbert, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance granting conditional use permit 23-22A for building structures or open spaces for conducting weddings and/or wedding receptions or other private parties to Joseph A. Kester and Craig A. Daly, property owners. Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Floor is yours.
Good evening, members of the council. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Jared Young. I'm one of the county planners on staff here with the county. Tonight, what I'd like to do is make one presentation for both Bill 5327 and 5328. Both bills will require council action, but for the sake of time, since both bills are on the same property, I thought I'd just summarize both proposed uses in one presentation. Bill number 5327 is a conditional use request for buildings, structures, or open spaces for weddings, receptions, or other private events. The second bill is Bill number 5328, which seeks approval for the operation of a private club. As I stated, both bills pertain to the property located at 2440 South Highway 94 on the southeast corner of the intersection of Highway DD and South Highway 94 near Defiance. The property is approximately 6.22 acres in size. In terms of proposed site improvements, the applicant proposes the construction of a 3,500 square foot main hall for private events such as weddings and corporate functions. Additionally, the hall will serve as a venue for the property owner's German Heritage Club. The site will also include on-site parking, stormwater management facilities, and a site distance easement to enhance visibility for motorists near this intersection of Highway DD and South Highway 94. To the south, the property joins single-family homes in the Ridge Creek Estates subdivision, where a Type 3 landscape buffer is planned to screen the area and address any potential visual impacts. The Planning and Zoning Commission, along with staff, have recommended 10 conditions for each bill to help minimize land use impacts for the surrounding area. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on August 21st, we heard from 5 speakers, 2 of which were in support, 2 in opposition, and 1 had concerns. In addition, we received 15 opposition letters. After the 2 public hearings, 1 for each of these requests, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 6-1 in favor for both applications and recommends that the County Council approve both applications, subject to the conditions outlined in the bills before you this evening. The Planning and Zoning Division also recommends approval as both uses comply with the conditional use permits requirements outlined in Section 405-510B of the County Code. Additionally, I believe the applicant is here, and they would like to make a brief presentation about the 2 uses.
That would be fine. Applicant?
Hello, I'm
I'll
Lisa
swear
John.
you in.
I'm sorry.
I'll swear you in.
Okay,
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I will. Hi, I'm Lisa Johnson. I'm an attorney with Amundsen Davis for the applicant. My address is 7711 Carondelet, Suite 800 in St. Louis. And we do have a short presentation. It's similar to the one, a little bit briefer than the one that was before Planning and Zoning, if you had a chance to review that. The structures on the front of the presentation are similar to, they were included in the prior presentation, but they're similar to what the applicant actually wants to place, which is a barn-like structure that'll be compatible with the agricultural area. in which the property is located. The area is zoned A agricultural. On the left, you'll see a wider view of the property. You can see the quarry to the north of the property, the residences to the southeast, and then to the west of the property is a large agricultural plot that's planted. And then closer pictures on the right. The surrounding area does include other commercial uses, such as the quarry that is directly across the road from the property, and other properties that have been either permitted commercial uses or zoned commercial. The private event space is planned to be a barn with an outdoor patio area with a limitation of 150 guests at a time. These events and also the club events are all to be limited to invitation only. They're not going to be open events at all, and that would be a condition of the use that we're requesting. The hours of the music are limited to an hour shorter than the hours of the event itself. And there's an example of the types of events that might be used, but typically something that you would rent a venue for. Private clubs are intended, this was separated out at staff recommendation at the planning and zoning level, so that we could differentiate between events and these clubs that the applicant wishes to allow to use the property. They'll have the same limitations on guests and things like that. And those are just examples of the type of clubs that might be permitted to use it. I would also point out that the applicant does reside on this property. His home is on the property. It's not a second home. This is his home that he lives in. He is on the site itself and would be there to monitor any events that would go on. The concept site plan is next, and what this shows is it indicates the parking, which is in the center. After an initial presentation to planning and zoning that was later tabled, the parking was moved to the interior. The purpose of that was to protect the view from the residences that are located to the southeast. And it was at request, and then the detention area was moved to the outside, and that would be protecting the visibility of those residences. On the north side, you'll see the effect of the approval from MoDOT that the applicant obtained. That took a couple of rounds with MoDOT. What they did was they reduced sight lines. They required that some landscaping be backed up from the road. And then it also provided for a two-lane out to the right, and one lane on the left in. And what that does is, I'm sorry, that's wrong. It provides for one lane out, one lane in, so that it allows people to go right and then not have, they originally wanted it just to go left. And so some of the complaints that the residents had made earlier in the process were that their entrance is down the road farther to the right there, and they were afraid that people coming out, then if they were not allowed to turn left, would then have to go to their subdivision, turn around and come out, and that's been alleviated. And then also, there are two lanes, but it doesn't allow for people to be in the right lane, looking left, and other cars turning left, and they're in each other's way. So it's one out, one in. There's 46 parking spaces required for this, but we're providing for 101 so that there would absolutely be no parking on the roads outside of the event. And then you'll see on the depiction on the left that there is a natural landscape buffer that will be retained. And again, that's for to protect the view from those homes to the south. There are 3 lots from the subdivision that are on that side. For the rationale analysis of the wedding event, it is not going to be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare. The applicant resides on the site and has common interests with the owners that are adjacent to them. The MoDOT approved entrance design will actually improve the safety of that intersection that there are some existing concerns about. Parking is on site, and then P&Z approval also required specific conditions be met, and my client has been very willing to meet all of the conditions that have been requested. The use is complementary to the current uses. It will appear as an agricultural, it's going to have a barn, maintain a lot of the landscaping, and it should be complementary to the existing site. And the hours should be compatible with the farming operations. It'll be mostly on weekends and evenings. And then again, to the north is a quarry, so it shouldn't interfere with use to the north. It won't be injurious to the use or enjoyment of the property in the immediate vicinity. Again, all efforts have been made to make this so that it doesn't interfere. There's sound restrictions. It's not intended to cause interference to the existing uses at all. And it won't diminish or impair property values. The applicant has common interests with these owners. He lives on site. It's his property. He resides there as well. And again, everything that we've noted before would not harm the property values. It's not going to make, and it's not going to interfere with future development. The property is already developed out to the south, and the other uses are already in existence. The application for the private club space really has the same analysis. There shouldn't really be any difference in how those are treated under the CUP requirements. And again, traffic considerations, the entrance and site distances were approved by MoDOT. We went back 2 times at least to MoDOT, made the changes that were requested. Vegetation will be cleared at the road area, which increases the sightline from its current status. And the one-way entrance and one-way exit, permitting a left turn without a second left turn lane, prevents sightline differences just within that entranceway. The landscape concept plan is, this is the one that was presented. It will be revised to draw back that landscaping along the roadway to increase the sightlines. However, the landscaping will also be provided at that layer so that it will also be screened from the road. The landscape plan also requires plants of varying heights, and the purpose of that is that between the subdivision and this property, there's already a significant woods area. One condition that was agreed upon at P&Z was that a berm would be put in place. He's agreed to do that. That'll be inside of the woods so that it won't require felling any trees. But the different layers of plants are also intended to screen headlights and that kind of thing. So it's not just going to be large trees. It'll also be lower plants to really provide good screening there. And this is just an example of the different types of plants, different heights of plants that might be required. There are surrounding event and wedding venues in the area, not immediately in this area. However, they have been approved for similar sites. And this is just an example of photographs showing that the use as a wedding venue is not something that's not complementary to the beautiful scenery there. It's something that's meant to use it in a way that is complementary and does not, it doesn't harm it. It just uses that scenery as something for a good use that is compatible with the master plan, which is to increase, it's intended to increase some agritourism in the area. It'll have the agricultural appearance, but it will bring people into the area, let them see that, and there will be use of vendors, suppliers, and things that will be bringing some business to this site. And these are the examples of some other kind of, there's the barn that's proposed, and there will be a pavilion as well, possibly. But those are just examples of the kinds of buildings that might be located there.
Okay, thank you. Do we have public comments?
Frank Hannon.
Okay. Just a reminder that for these CUPs, you do have to get sworn in. Okay.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you for making your time available. I'll be brief. My name is Frank Hannon. I live at 461 Matt's Way in the Ridge Creek Estate. And my property is about 150 yards from the residence of Mr. Kester. I'd like to address some of the points that the lady just made, specifically about CUP criteria 405.510B. There being no safety concerns. That is not the case. And I want to say that that intersection is very deadly
There's a lot of accidents there. And you're gonna have now a place that serves alcohol, and there's gonna be a lot more frequency of that in that area. You have people that are coming out of the subdivisions, so you're gonna increase the risk of traffic deaths due to alcohol-related accidents. And it's a big concern for me, having a daughter that's getting ready to drive, as well as several other teenagers that live in our subdivision and the other neighbors that have daughters and sons that are driving. They're going to be more prone to accidents and being killed by a drunk driver. So that's the number one concern I wanted to bring. I also wanted to quickly just bring out a few points from research. According to the Appraisal Institute, notes that living near what they qualify as a bad neighbor can devalue your property by as much as 10%. A bad neighbor could be anything from a personal property that has excessive noise, trash, potentially drug abuse, things like that. But it also, according to Realtor.com and to HomeLight, would be any place that serves spirits. So it could be a bar or a wedding venue that serves alcohol, which in this case is obviously part of the plan. And just to reference some numbers here, in our subdivision alone, not the new Markham Hill subdivision, the average home price is around $1 million. If you dilute the value of the, approximately 25 homes, you've got over $2.5 million in valuations or reduction in valuations of homes. That, to 33% tax rate, that's approximately $100,000 a year less in revenue for the county for property taxes. And that's just our subdivision alone. That doesn't take into consideration the Markham Hill subdivision and then the other properties around it. The final point I would like to make is that I do agree with the council's notes that there are other zone properties commercial, but they're all on the other side of the highway. The quarry has been there for a long time, probably before any of the homes were built. And all the properties next to Mr. Kester's proposed site, both on the east and the southwest side, are all residences. So you would have one commercial property dead set right in the middle of all these residences. And quite frankly, every morning we can hear his chickens, okay? So we really don't want to be listening to people, all hours of the day, 5 days, 7 days a week, when we're already dealing with, motorcycles and everything else going on there. So that's it. I hope you consider our thoughts, but it's going to devastate the values of our property in the subdivision, as well as affect the quality of life that we have and we've come to enjoy living in a rural area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Matt Pieper.
I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. I'm Matt Pieper. I live at 41 Matt's Way, next door to Frank. My family has been in St. Charles County since the 1800s. I've been a lifelong resident of this county, with the exception of the few years I was stationed out of state with the Air Force. I worked as a trauma surgeon for the last 10 years downtown at SLU, but now I'm building a surgical practice out in St. Charles County, and I'm doing this because I care about this community. I want to live the rest of my life here, and I want to be of service to my neighbors. When we built our house in this neighborhood, part of our decision to choose this location was based on the zoning expectation of what would be on the surrounding properties. This was an established residential neighborhood long before the applicants bought their property and made a plan to build an event center/concert hall next door to their neighbors. I think their project is a good idea, but it should be built in an area more suitable. I think it's very selfish to buy ag residential land in a neighborhood because it's cheaper than commercially zoned land and put up this kind of business with no concern for your neighbors who live next door. I also worry approval of this project could send a message to other potential residents to be careful if you want to build your dream home in St. Charles County, that you may not be able to trust the zoning or stated goals of this county. 1 year ago, many of the same neighbors opposing this project here were opposing the zoning of the property at F and 94. We did not oppose the property owners themselves or their idea of a meat market. They're good people with a good idea, but we opposed the rezoning of a parcel right in the middle of these rural homes being zoned as C2. We were concerned that once the zoning change occurred, the genie was out of the bottle and it could be turned into nearly any type of commercial business. Within 1 year of getting the zoning change, they have chosen to put their meat market downtown Defiance and presumably abandon the plan to build it on the parcel at F and 94. That is what was presented to you at the time for justification for the zoning change. Now that land can be sold as a commercial parcel, and who knows what will be done with it. I think that zoning change was a mistake. and I don't think we should make the same mistake with this proposal in front of us now. I'm concerned that an approval of this CUP creates an opportunity for expansion of the commercial project on what is zoned as ag residential farm. If they receive the CUP, they won't have to come before the county council to get approval for expansion of the building, parking, or whatever they want to grow into. This is the one opportunity to hold the zoning plan that benefits the county and the residents that trust in that plan. Lastly, I have a quick question for the council members. Are any of you a part of investor groups that have had discussions with the applicants about being a potential investor in their project? And if so, would you recuse yourself for voting on the approval?
Thank you, sir.
Elizabeth Bland.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Bland. I live at 441 Matt's Way on the other side of Frank Hannon, 2 doors over from Dr. Pieper, who, by the way, was very modest in discussing what he does. Just so you know, this man has done surgery in helicopters while taking fire, so very respectable guy over here. So I'm not going to spend my time discussing our concerns over noise, traffic, safety. All of those are common amongst all of us. You can read it in the packets. What I'm concerned about is what this is actually going to become. The request is very ambiguous and far-reaching. It's a wedding venue, but there's hardly any mention of weddings. It's a private party facility, but we're not seeing birthday parties and anniversaries and engagement parties, any of that stuff on there. It's a private club facility, which actually appears to be a club for clubs if you read through it, and I'm not quite sure what you call a private club for private clubs. But looking at all the uses, there are 2 things that really stand out. One, this is an event center, it's a banquet center, it's a concert hall, it borders on being a restaurant and a commercial farm stand. Bottom line, it really isn't any of the uses they're seeking conditional use for. Second, and probably most concerning, is the fact that this is intended to be a brew house under the guise of these various conditional uses. The applicant has told numerous people of his dream to have a brew house, my husband and I included. If you read the packet closely, he notates his certifications as a brewer that he received in Germany. His uses mention brewing classes, tasting and clubs. A brew house is defined by St. Charles County UDO as 1 or more buildings, structures, and open spaces utilized for brewing of beer or cider and/or distilling of spirits for both on-site and off-site sale and consumption, with or without subsidiary accessory uses, including but not limited to the preparation of food, sale and service of prepared food indoors and outdoors, conducting of weddings and/or wedding receptions or other private parties and tours of the brew house. This requires C2 zoning. Once approved, we can file complaints if we discover that it's being used for other activities outside of approved conditional use, but the chances of anything coming of that are very slim because the county can only view it from public right-of-way, so they can't go onto the private property to observe what's happening in there. And by the time they would want to go and look at anything, the chances are the event would be over and we wouldn't be able to see what was really happening here. We aren't even sure why there is a need for a private club use. Most all of the clubs he's mentioned are existing clubs and don't need the space. They are not his private club. The last time a private club was even requested through the county council was in 2019, and that was the St. Louis Yacht Club, who has their own facility, and I'm not even sure why it keeps being brought up on his proposal. A definition of private club is a building or portion of a building intended to be used as a center of informal association for a selective membership. He's basically just listed a bunch of clubs that he hopes to rent at his event center. This is a chance for the county council to vote with the will of the surrounding community, those that are most impacted by this. You will see by the letters of opposition, the neighbors do not support this. Our own representative on planning and zoning, Kyle Schell, voted against this because he knows it's not right for the area. There's been statements by our county council representative that neighbors support this. If you look through the packet, there's not a letter of support from any neighbor in this packet. This is very similar to what's being requested at the church this evening that you're going to hear about. It's a piece of a conditional use of a church that's surrounded by residential area. And now that it can't be a church anymore, they're seeking to have this zoned as commercial. And that's our fear here. What happens when this fails or doesn't survive? What will it become? And that's all I have to say. Thank you. Oh, by the way, in the picture, that meat market isn't there that they showed. That they keep showing. That's the one that's in downtown Defiance.
Deb Lammers.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Hi, good evening. I'm here for the venue. It's a shame that the neighbors don't support him because he's a very supportive neighbor. Everything that they have had concerns on, Mr. Kester has addressed. Sound, parking, it was too big, it was too little, he moved it, he went to MoDOT, he's always, as long as I've known him, wanted to work and live, work where he lived. He's not going to turn in anything else. And all the clubs you're talking about, I think, are maybe provisions because of things that are being brought up that he has to fight. It's like he's part of Sister Cities, so he wants to have German Club there. So then you have to then address this bigger picture. It's a wedding venue, no outside loud music, no amplified music. He, I think, shortened the hours more than what they were requesting. He's a man of his word. He's been a German teacher for years. He's retired. And he really just wants to live on site, have the wedding venue, and it's a beautiful, his plans are beautiful. It would not bring down the value. It would enhance that area. They were in opposition of the meat market. It was approved, and they moved because of a deal. But it just goes to show you that corner that's opposite of his property is going to sell, and it's going to become large. This also has a tax base. He's not going to brew beer. He's not going to do the food. He's not going to have the music. All this is going to be brought in and, approved. Like he's just up the hill, and he's going to live there, and he's not going to want to hear it, and he's not going to put up with the, as far as the intoxicated people, there's wineries there. You can't really control that. I hope to God nowadays people have Uber, they have, designated drivers. I think his attorney said that MoDOT said this would approve the corner. It's not a dangerous corner if people respect the law, slow down. Yes, there have been accidents there. But if you slow down, respect the law, and do the speed limit, the requested speed limit, I think that it would be not a detriment, So any other, that's all I got. Okay, thank you.
Good job. Wait, Nick.
That's the final speaker.
That was the final speaker. Okay. Now we'll open it up to questions, comments from council members on this particular.
You're going to have the applicant's attorney come back?
Yes, yeah.
I got a couple questions.
Okay.
Jared, on the light conditions, has lighting restrictions, what kind of restrictions are those?
So like in the site, if this gets approved, it goes to site plan, and all site plans have to have full cutoff light fixtures to prevent any kind of.
All goes down?
Yeah, and then they have to provide, or we can ask them to provide a photometric plan that shows that at the edge of the properties, it won't exceed the limits in the ordinance.
It cannot go across it cannot
Correct.
cross the property?
Correct.
Okay. What about the buffer? Is that a dirt buffer with plants on, like trees on top?
Yes, so type 3, usually we let the applicant choose whether they want to do a 6-foot berm and then large trees or a site-proof fence. In this case, the applicant chose to do a landscaping berm. That berm should be 6 feet.
6 foot tall with
Yeah,
trees on top?
with trees, but
Evergreens on top?
the existing tree line, and then they have to fill in wherever it's not
Those tree
sufficient.
lines would be behind it, so you.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then the restrictions on the music, you have that where the music stops at 10, is that correct? And it's got to be inside?
Correct. There should be a condition that prohibits outdoor amplified sound totally.
At 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock?
Just outdoor in general. So this would only be inside.
Okay,
So,
okay. The one thing that's whether or not it's good or bad, this plan, the accidents that occur there often is because of the blind spot. And so this requirement, they have to remove all those trees, so it opens up the blind spot.
Yeah, typically in those site distance easements, they have to remove all the vegetation and maintain it so that motorists can see through that site distance
Does that become
easement.
the hatch there, or become a permanently site easement, or what would you call it?
Yeah, site distance
So
easement.
no trees can be, it'll be clear?
Typically, yeah, correct. It would be between them and MoDOT, I'd imagine, since it's MoDOT right of way.
We could make it a condition, right, where it's a site distance, or where you have a,
Presumably, yeah.
okay. Okay, I don't have any questions right now. That's it, I think.
Mr. Swanson.
Yeah, I was looking at the site plan here, and counted up 56 parking spots from the drawing, but they said they're gonna have it up to 150 people. So even if 2 people are coming per vehicle, I don't know how the math works on that.
Yeah, we would only enforce the minimum, the parking minimum in the ordinance. So, we'd have to look at it. I don't know that 46 is required. We'd have to look to see based on the type of use. We'd basically just double check that they're calculating parking calculations according to the ordinance.
Second, I was told by a resident that there's a cemetery on this property.
I don't know. You'd have to ask the applicant.
Someone from St. Charles Historical Society alerted me to that, and then if there was, what such a mission is occurring.
I'm sorry.
It's adjacent to that property, right? Oh, it's adjacent. Okay. So they were close. Right. All right. Just want to double check on that one because they don't like the historical society hollering at me too much. So that works. And then lastly, I haven't seen an application like this come through as a club. And the one lady did the research said that 2019 was the last one, the St. Louis Yacht Club.
Correct.
Why are we coming in as a club?
I think it was based on staff recommendation to address concerns. I think originally, part of the concerns was that it'd be kind of like a establishment that's open, Sunday through Sunday, 10 to 10. And one way to modify. One way to address that is to have a private club of just, selective members, like the German Heritage Club, to prevent the public from just coming and going. But you are correct, it is the first one since 2019.
Now it works. Yes, Mr. Ely.
Are we going to have the attorney come back?
Yes, please, come on. Yes. Okay.
I thought she was going to address, and then I just have some concerns.
Okay, I was going to address a few points that were made, if that's all right. So it was mentioned a few times about the fact that they were thinking this was being zoned commercial, and then it could be, and I'm sure you know this, that if it's zoned commercial, then they're afraid that it would be sold then as a commercial property. And as you know, if it's a CUP, then they would have to come, if it was sold, or if the use changed in any material manner, such as require additional buildings or things like that in addition to the site plan, then they would have to come back for additional permission to do that. They would be limited to these conditions. And so I just wanted to address that. I wanted to address the brew house comment. That's not something that's part of this proposal at all. The clubs that are listed were examples of types of clubs that might be permitted to use this as a center for that club to have its meetings. The staff did ask that we separate out the narrative, and when that happened, it was divided into 2 separate bills. And the purpose, again, was so that if he used the event space for clubs, it's just separating it for that particular use. He does reside on site. If he chose to have clubs that he was in meet on site, he probably could do that anyway. But this is really just allowing him to use the event space as a site for these clubs to meet. And those are examples. It doesn't mean that it's that we're representing that club would meet at the site at all.
Questions?
And one more comment.
Oh, sure.
There was a letter of support. There was at least one letter of support that did come in to the county.
I think Mr. Swanson had a question about parking.
The proposed parking was, I believe we got 100 and, I was looking for it a moment ago. 101 spaces. That's what is being proposed. So the site plan that would be presented, if that's the condition, would have to include that many parking spaces. And we're well aware of that. The berm is also something that came up during the planning and zoning meeting. The applicant readily agreed to that. He said, yes, if that's going to help, with the visibility from the adjacent sites, he immediately agreed to that. That's not a problem. And there is no, as far as concert hall, it's not proposed to be a concert hall. These are all going to be limited events, wedding venues, weddings, that type of thing. I mean, you use the term wedding, when you're having an event space. That's just a typical thing that you see as a rental of that type of event space, and that's the reason that wedding was used. It is planned to be used for weddings.
All right. Does anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I just
Did I
wanted to
answer
give
your
her an
question?
opportunity to talk. So I have a number of concerns about this. I mean, looking at the drawings on the map as to where this is, there are some houses right on the other side of that property line. And, I mean, I appreciate the fact that sound carries, and it runs like water. So I have a number of residents who live right along 364, and they just get blown out of their backyards by the traffic that goes by that. And I know you've got another venue right down the street that is a wedding venue. It's not theirs, but it's a wedding venue. And when you do the broader map, you can see, is it Defiance Ridge? It's there. It used to be Chandler Hill, right? It's still down there. So I thought, didn't we years ago, when Chandler Hill changed ownership, didn't we approve a private club at Chandler Hill?
Wine Country Gardens.
Wine Country Gardens. I knew we did another private club somewhere there.
And this is not, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is not in the sense of a private club where you have like a hunting club or something that's going to be on site all the time where it's their location to come to. That's not the intention. The intention is to use it. And this is why it was originally an event space and it was changed at the request of staff. I think it's really almost more confusing. It's so that it can be rented for the club space. It's not to house a private club on site and it's going to be that club's, it's not for the purpose of having it as the club's permanent location. It will be by invitation only and by club membership only. If it comes to those events.
I agree it's confusing because I'm confused about
Yeah.
what that means, and I agree, that's very nebulous. I don't really understand what's going on with that.
It's really intended to be a specific kind of event, and that's why it's confusing, I think.
I mean, I appreciate that it's a CUP and it's not changing the zoning to C2 like down the street for the butcher shop. I appreciate that, but I don't understand the appeal of why would someone want to have their wedding there? I mean, the pictures that you showed of the other venues in the area, I get it. There's some beautiful scenery that is down in that area, and I understand the appeal there. I mean, obviously, it's his business plan, not mine. This is a very busy corner. At 94 and Double D is a corner where you see a lot of traffic. And to put anything on that corner that's going to invite more traffic doesn't seem to be a well-thought-out plan. I mean, it just seems to really scream, this is going to invite traffic issues. The stuff that we looked at with the butcher shop, one of the things I think a number of us saw with that, I believe that was a 1-acre lot. And so there wasn't a ton that was going to be able to go in on that 1-acre lot. It was down the street from this just a little bit, and it was on that other corner.
Across the street.
It's not right across the street from this, right? It's right down. Right, but you're down just a little bit, and you turn on F, and it's on that other side.
Yeah.
It's not on the corner where 94 comes in.
Right.
So, and because it was 1 acre, not over 6, then there was pretty limited as to, if you're going to get rid of the butcher shop, like it seems like they've done, what are they going to be able to do? But I agree with the one lady. I think we probably should have, or the gentleman who said we probably should have thought that out a little better. I agree with you. We left the door open on that one. We probably should have done a CUP as opposed to doing the zoning change. I'm just curious as to, I don't see the business plan on this being successful from a wedding venue standpoint because you've got so many other beautiful wedding venues that you can stay right down the street from it. It's a high traffic area. You are right next to those houses, and you can hear, because I know the folks sent some letters, the event space down the street, you can hear the music from them. If you can hear that from there, you're not going to be able to hide music here.
Well, I don't know what the conditions are on the event venue down the street, but the conditions to be imposed on this site are to have no outside amplified sound whatsoever. And so that is something, in response to the comment made earlier, that the county could, if they came and viewed it, they would be able to tell if there had been amplified sound outside of the buildings. Even though it is a larger site, it's 6 acres, so it is larger than maybe it appears on there. If you look at the pictures that are in the packet, it does have a lot of vegetation. It is a beautiful site.
But with all due respect, aren't you talking about putting the venue right in the middle of it?
Without removing much vegetation. There is some agricultural area in the center. He's going to place it in a way that does not remove as much vegetation as possible. The events are going to occur indoors. Some of those showed outdoor events. These are going to be inside the barn. And it is a beautiful site. It may not have hills that are right there. I don't know if it does or not, but it is a beautiful site. A lot of landscaping is planned. And, if it's appropriate as long as we're talking about business plans, maybe it's appropriate for smaller wedding venues, which would be less intrusive on the neighbors. But saying that the business plan isn't appropriate because it's not compared to some other wedding venues, I don't think that's really a fair treatment of this conditional use. It is a beautiful site. It is a plan to have good buildings that are compatible with the area and increase the landscaping so that it is a good use of this property. That is his business plan, and he wants to be successful in that. And as far as Mr. Swanson's comment about the easement, that is intended to be cleared permanently and maintain that site line along that entire area. That is going to be cleared back, and landscaping is only going to occur behind it. It will be lowered, to be compliant with MoDOT.
I can tell you pretty much anything that gets proposed that comes before us, we always hear three things, right? It's always going to increase traffic, increase noise, and lower my property values. I don't care if you're going to put a monk house next to it. We always hear those three things, right? In almost every occasion, none of those are true. Maybe one, but very few of those are true. In this one, I think all three of them may be true. I don't know that that's true, but when I look at this, the propensity for all three of those things to happen seems to be pretty high on this particular corner, and I'd like to see a little more research kind of go into this to try and mitigate some of those. That was just my concern.
Yeah, well, in all fairness, there has been a lot of research that's gone into it. MoDOT has heavily investigated this. They'd been out there on more than one occasions. It went up to the state level. It wasn't just the local office of MoDOT. It went up to the state level twice. They reviewed it, and they made sure that they thought it was in their opinion safe. It wasn't just treated in a haphazard manner. It was heavily investigated by MoDOT.
But I would suggest to you the reason that it had to go that high is because it is such a high traffic area. That's why it had to get kicked to there. If it wasn't such a high traffic area, your local guy could have approved it. I mean, Andy could have approved this from MoDOT.
Maybe that's true, but that doesn't change the final result. That if they did decide it was safe, then they decided that with these conditions it was safe. And if there are accidents there now, I can't imagine that reducing that vegetation on the corner. And he's also agreed as part of the MoDOT approval to make some changes even on the pavement on the sides. And so, with all of those changes, I can't imagine that it wouldn't actually be safer than it is now.
Fair enough.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments?
Yeah, does anyone else down there have a comment? I just have one final one.
Go ahead.
Okay. You said the applicant's going to live on site, correct?
He does live on site currently, and he intends to stay there.
Okay.
And be present during any events.
How much land does his house sit on that he's going to be keeping?
It's on the same parcel.
I know. How much land is he not going to develop?
How much land is he what?
Yeah, that he's going to have around his house that's not going to be developed. Because right now we're sitting at 6 acres. Looking at his house on the map right here, I'm saying he's got probably a good solid acre to 2 acres that he'd probably want to keep around it, which now means this parcel is down to 4 acres for development.
Well, reduced development is actually going to cause less disruption to the property. He then also intends
No,
to
you're just
maintain the
putting
landscaping
a
along the
large
buffer.
facility on a smaller piece of property. You're not subdividing it here, which is what we would normally see. So he's staying there, he's gonna keep land around his house to protect himself, and then develop the rest of it. So I'm just wondering how much of it is actually gonna develop that's not part of his actual
Well,
residence.
it's exactly what's on the site plan, and he's also going to
Okay,
increase.
so you don't have an answer, that's fine.
I just answered you.
No, you
He's
didn't.
going.
That's fine. I wanted a number, you don't have a number, that's
It's
fine.
on the same lot.
That's
So it is
You're okay.
not separated. He's maintaining the landscaping around his home, as well as increasing the landscaping between himself, along with building the berm and placing trees on top of it between himself and the neighbors in an effort to protect their property.
Do you understand what he's asking though?
I do, but I don't.
She's just not gonna answer.
I don't
That's
think,
fine.
I don't think she knows exactly how much land he's going to keep for personal
It's
use.
not a separate parcel, and he's not separating it in that manner, so there's not an answer to that. I can try to obtain that information from you, but he's not subdividing, like you said, so it's not a separate piece. He's living on this property.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
No.
Any discussion amongst ourselves on this particular CUP? Okay. Just a reminder for those folks, this CUP will be voted on at the next meeting, which is
September 30th,
September the 30th.
3 weeks.
And at that time, there will be no more discussion, from speakers or testimony from speakers. It'll just be a matter of the council with a small amount of discussion and a vote. Okay? All right. Thank you. Next up will be public comments.
Well, we need
Yes,
to introduce the
Oh,
next
yes,
bill.
go ahead, introduce the second one.
Bill number 5328, requested by Mike Hurlbert, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance granting conditional use permit CUP 23-22B for a private club to Joseph A. Kester and Craig A. Daly property owners.
Again, this is, I think we combined them both, and I don't think there's really any need to have a renewed discussion on this particular second one, because we've already
Excuse me.
talked. We do.
You have to have public comment.
Okay.
You have to have, if people want to talk about it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone that signed up for public comment for this particular?
every
person. Has already spoken. Okay.
Would anyone like to speak again that's already spoke?
Okay. All right, that's sufficient then. All right. All right, we will now move on to public comments. Just a reminder that to fill out a speaker card, and you will be limited, unlike this CUP, the public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. And what's it?
Michelle McBride.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, we'll start with Michelle. And we will not limit you to 3 minutes. We'll give you a little bit of grace.
I should be able to do this in 3 minutes or less. I'm just going to start out. I always like to remember how we got here. So I'm going to put this slide up. Hopefully, oh, good, it shows there. So you all remember in May of '23, Senate Bill 190 was passed. Then in September of 2023, our council passed a county ordinance to put the seniors' tax relief into play. Then January 1st of 2024, the Missouri General Assembly went back into session, floated a number of bills proposing changes. We looked really closely at what they were proposing. We built that into our application so we could collect that information, but we really couldn't start approving them until after May 17th, when the General Assembly passed Senate Bill 756 and finally stabilized the law. So if you're hearing from constituents, I applied way back here, but they're just now telling me what's wrong or right with my application, that's why. There was a delay because we had to wait for the law to stabilize. Where we are today, we've got 35,389 applications in our database. We have 32,459 of those reviewed. We have 2,512 left to review. Of those, we also have 416 that were like duplicate applications, so people putting more than once. We have 12,000, little more than, that have been rejected. We have 20,335 that have been accepted. We have over 5,000, 5,900 that IS said are direct, they were rejected. They have now given us a corrected application to replace that rejected application that was made on time. We need to bear in mind that some rejections are valid. When somebody applies for 4 different parcels and they're only entitled to 1, 3 of those are valid rejections. When somebody applies who was not 62 on January 1st, those are valid rejections. When somebody applies who moved into St. Charles County in May, didn't own the house on January 1st, those are valid rejections. So that's where we are today. Where we're headed is a real estate tax bill for those who qualified in 2024 that will look something similar to this. Down the side will be the normal list of taxing entities. It will separate out, like it'll say ambulance-debt, ambulance-non-debt, fire-debt, fire-non-debt, because it is the non-debt portion of the tax liability that is frozen. So we want to make that very clear for the citizens so they understand where their benefit is coming from. It's going to have a multitude of columns that aren't always there. We did in the past include the tax rate and the tax liability for the year. The new format for those who are qualified for the plan will also show the frozen liability amount, the credit amount, and the amount due. Because we have to mail these in a separate billing group, we'll be sending them to our printer in a different billing group because they're going to be a different format of the bill. We are looking at sending the 2025 renewal application for those who qualified in 2024 right with that bill. So that's where we're at today. Any questions?
Questions? The only one that I've got is that, and I've got several emails, that when people are rejected, that the letter of rejection doesn't explain why they've been rejected. And I said I would certainly ask you that.
Well, the first letter that did, we had many people come in just wanting to hand us one document and wanting us to go pair it up. That's impossible. 12-member staff, even though we've hired some seasonals, we're probably only still up to about 20 members working on 36,000 applications. So we have to have a complete corrected application. So we took the reason off and we gave them, here's what you need to submit, thinking, okay, we're giving you the list of items. And then they still all want to know, well, what did I do wrong? So we put the reason back on, but even when you tell them the reason, they're like, well, but I submitted that. And then when you pull it up and show it to them, it's not what they submitted. So we're learning a lot this year. And we've got a lot of good ideas, I think, for next year that will make this much easier on both sides.
I mean, I have mentioned to many constituents that we will try very hard to improve and simplify this process next year.
Right.
Yes.
Michelle, I was wondering about the renewal notices that are going to come out. Do those have to have all of the same information, or can there be something which basically certifies or swears that there is no change?
If it's a renewal application, it's going to be more like a one-page affidavit. But we do have to know they're still at the same property.
Sure.
And that they're still here.
But you wouldn't need to send
That they're
certain
not going to have
documents.
to send all the ownership documents again.
Perfect, thank you.
An initial applicant in 2025
Yes.
obviously will have to provide the
Yes.
same things that the initial applicants did this year.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Michelle, a couple complaints I had was when someone's filling out the application and they don't have the proper information at that time, if they dismiss the application, they gotta redo it all. It doesn't save the information. I don't know if that's true, but that's some complaints I heard is that.
That is true. Again, first year of the program, IS developed a good program. We locked it off on June 30th because that was the end of the application period. Our ordinance says March 1 to June 30th. When we were looking at the acceptance to rejection ratio, we decided 1 out of 3 rejected. We probably failed in communicating clearly what should be submitted. So we opened up this courtesy correction period. And again, we have to have a complete corrected application because we can't go picking up the pieces from back then.
And the other one is the trust situation with irrevocable trust and those kind of things that they have to bring in. Like, can't they just show a front page instead of the 150 copies of the whole?
Here's the problem. We don't want to We don't want to keep their trust. We have no real desire to even have to read these trusts. But the truth of the matter is, when a person transfers their real estate into a trust, that individual no longer owns the real estate. And the trust, a legal entity, has to provide for the applicant, who is an individual person, to reside on that parcel of real estate and give them the responsibility of paying the tax. Those are two requirements that I believe were in the original Senate Bill 190, that the applicant has to prove they're eligible for this. And
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think it may be a little excessive where they gotta copy their whole trust.
they don't have to copy it.
That's
We
what they're
have-
being told, though. I think we might have talked about this.
In the
but-
beginning, that was what we asked. We set up a dedicated service area back on August 1st. They bring their trust in. We have notaries who quickly scan for the appropriate sections, and usually we find them either under the real estate, or under the trustee powers, or under residential real estate, and we just read that paragraph to make sure it's providing for the right to reside on the property and the responsibility to pay the tax. Then we have them execute an affidavit. They take their whole trust book home with them. We retain only that affidavit. So we've kind of corrected that,
Okay.
or we very much corrected that, I should say.
Any other questions? Yes, Tim?
Do you have any process to where people can do this all online?
We did for the original application process, from March 1 to June 30th. The problem, and we talked about reopening that for the correction period. One, the correction period is strictly a courtesy. There was no requirement anywhere that we do that. But the communication director approached me and he said, I think I failed in the job because you've got 1 out of 3 getting rejected. We must not have communicated this very clearly. So the decision was made that they come in because if they did it wrong once, the probability of them doing it wrong again was very great. If there are people who are unable to come in, we do have some special accommodations we are making to assist those people. We're not trying to exclude anybody. That's why we opened this whole correction period. We should have been done with this many months ago, but thanks to the administration and they're loaning us employees from other departments, we are still trudging through this. We still have 2,500 applications from the initial March through June to get through while we are simultaneously going through these 5,900 that have already come back to correct it. So the reason we didn't reopen the online for corrections is we wanted people to get it right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other comments? Thank you, we appreciate it.
Most welcome.
All right, yes. Now we go to public comments, and
Regarding Bill number 5329, Steve Amron.
you don't need to be swearing in for this, okay?
Well, it sounds like we're going to be talking about a little bit of deja vu all over again with a C2 application. Came to discuss the rezoning to C2 of a building with no plan. There's a building in place, but it's a church. It's zoned agricultural. So, you know, we're open to any C2. I've spoken to a majority of the neighbors that basically border the church right now, and nobody is in favor of going to C2. They would entertain CO, or possibly a R1 would be more applicable. It's all nice, large 2 to 10 acre lot homes that surround this on all sides, with the exception of across the street from them, is zoned commercial. Speaking of that property that's zoned commercial, I don't know if anybody drives up and down Highway 70, but you see what blank zoning, you know, that property was probably zoned 20 years ago, and now we have a 4-story monstrosity that we all have to look at that's right by our house. That's probably the 7th storage facility that you can probably see from the roof of that building. Wanted to talk about the increase in traffic. Same as the other place. North Point Prairie is very narrow, no shoulder. I mean, all the issues with that. I'm not sure that having additional traffic on that road is going to make it any better. With school out and the David Hochul Parkway open, now it's 15 cars deep trying to get in and onto the outer road. So traffic's a mess. Once again, we're talking about property values again. C2, unlike a conditional use permit, we have no choice. So whatever is put in there after they leave, it's a crapshoot. I mean, we could have a 24-hour karaoke bar with outside band.
Thank you, sir.
Bandstand.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Bill number 5329, Robert Guinness.
You don't need to be sworn in, sir.
Thank you. My name is Robert Geddes. I'm an attorney representing the Agape Church of Wentzville. That's the applicant. And so when they talk about, the area around this property, if you stand in the parking lot, and this is a church that has 119 paved parking spaces in it. This is not an agricultural use. And if you look across the street, this is what you see, commercial uses surrounding this property. This church has 21-foot-high ceilings and a large auditorium space, and they have a potential buyer who wants to use it for a recreational facility. That's a C2 use. The gentleman who mentioned the other potential zoning uses, you can't use it for a recreational facility, so it has to be C2. That's why we applied for C2. The very thorough staff report recommended approval of the zoning. We urge you, when it comes up next month, next meeting, September 30th, to approve the ordinance so that the Agape Church can sell this property and move to a better location. It's already has facilities for up to 1,000 people to attend the church, so you're not really changing the actual use of this property by agreeing to the zoning. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
We'll call you. We'll call you when we discuss it.
Yes, thank you.
If we do. Thank you, sir.
Bill 5329, Mark Parson.
You don't need to be sworn in, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Does this work here?
Yep.
It takes a second.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, that's not gonna work. I want to bring up a picture of the actual property here. Let's see. That right there's the actual property. Around the property, we have houses. Everywhere around this here. Large-sized lots like Steve had mentioned. North Point Prairie has a ton of traffic from the high school up there. The road is not in great shape already. I think, like Steve was saying, all the neighbors have kind of chatted, and we are not really on board with letting that be C2 zoning. There is a dentist office up on the service road that's in front of a neighborhood. Something like that might actually fit in that area and be okay with all the neighbors over there. But with that field being a zone commercial right across the street, we were hoping to keep that all commercial property over in that area. He mentioned it being a rec center. I've looked at pictures of that there. I don't know how we're gonna fit basketball hoops in there with only 20-foot high ceilings or so. So I'm not sure that it's a great plan with that either. There is a cell phone tower in the middle of this property, and I don't know what the legalities is on building, how far we need to build from a cell phone tower like that. So I think another idea, something that we talked about that might actually fit there is some single-family homes that got decent amount of space to it and kind of fits what is in the surrounding area there. Again, as Mr. Elan was saying, the traffic, the noise, the property value are all kind of our concerns as well. So I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's the final speaker.
Okay. All right. Moving on, do we have an oral report from the county executive?
No, sir.
Please, okay. All right, we now move to the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the consent agenda has been passed. We move to resolution number 24-07.
Resolution 24-07, sponsored by Terry Hollander. A resolution appointing Luke Kehoe to the Board of Trustees of the Greens Bottom Levy District Number 2.
Okay, questions or comments on this particular resolution? Seeing none?
Resolution 24-07, sponsored by Terry Hollander. A resolution appointing Luke Kehoe to the Board of Trustees of the Greens Bottom Levy District Number 2. Councilman Swanson?
Yes.
Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Baker?
Yes.
Okay, resolution 24-07 passes. The first bill for final passage is bill number 5322.
Bill number 5322, an ordinance approving the installation of 2 dams across 2 natural watercourses within a 184.59 acre tract adjoining Centennial Farms Drive and near the city of New Melly.
Questions or comments on 5322? Seeing none, please call the roll.
We have a substitute.
Okay.
Anyone would motion to amend with a substitute?
Make a motion that we amend Bill 5322 and replace it with substitute Bill 5322.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we're discussing the substitute bill.
Correct.
Is there any questions or comments on the substitute bill?
What's being substituted? Sorry.
The condition that it's not under the federal waterway guidelines. The dams are subject to the Corps of Engineer guidelines.
Okay. All right. Okay, all right. Seeing no discussion, please call the roll.
Substitute Bill number 5322. An ordinance approving the installation of 2 dams across 2 natural watercourses within a 184.59 acre tract adjoining Centennial Farms Drive and near the city of New Melly. Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Baker?
Yes.
Councilman Swanson?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Bill 5322 passes. Next up, Bill 5323.
Bill number 5323, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to enter into an intergovernmental agreement and to execute a quitclaim deed to convey the city of Lake St. Louis a portion of Duello Road that was relocated within the municipal boundaries of the city.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bill number 5323, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to enter into an intergovernmental agreement and to execute a quitclaim deed to convey to the city of Lake St. Louis a portion of Duello Road that was relocated within the municipal boundaries of the city. Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Baker?
Yes.
Councilman Swanson?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Okay, Bill number 5323 passes. Bill number 5324.
Bill number 5324, an ordinance approving a First Amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the City of St. Peters for road improvements needed to support the Economic Development Lakeside 370 North Point Development Project.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bill number 5324, an ordinance approving a First Amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the City of St. Peters for road improvements needed to support the Economic Development Lakeside 370 North Point Development Project. Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilwoman
Yes.
Schneider? Councilman Baker?
Yes.
Councilman Swanson?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Okay, Bill 5324 passes. Next up, Bill 5325.
Bill number 5325, an ordinance authorizing execution of Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission State Block Grant Agreement, Airport Improvement Program Grant, Project 24-111A-1, CFDA 20.106, for the design and engineering only of a runway pavement mill and overlay project at St. Charles County Regional Airport Smart Field.
Questions or comments on 5325? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bill number 5325, an ordinance authorizing execution of Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission's State Block Grant Agreement, Airport Improvement Program Grant, Project 24-111A-1, CFDA 20.106, for the design and engineering only of a runway pavement mill and overlay project at St. Charles County Regional Airport Smart Field. Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Baker?
Yes.
Councilman Swanson?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes. Okay, Bill number 5325 passes. The last bill for final passage is Bill number 5326.
Bill number 5326, an ordinance authorizing the county executive and chief of police to execute a memorandum of understanding to participate in the St. Louis Gateway Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force co-located Strike Force Initiative to combat organized crime and drug trafficking activities.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bill number 5326, an ordinance authorizing the county executive and chief of police to execute a memorandum of understanding to participate in the St. Louis Gateway Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force co-located Strike Force Initiative to combat organized crime and drug trafficking activities. Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Baker?
Yes.
Councilman Swanson?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Okay, Bill 5326 passes. Now we go to bills for introduction, beginning with Bill number 5329.
Bill number 5329, requested by Mike Hurlbert, sponsored by Matt Swanson. An ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from A Agricultural District to C2 General Commercial District per application RZ 24-06.
Okay, questions, comments on this particular bill? Mr. Swanson. we'll
Thank
start
you,
with
sir. I met with all the neighbors. We met, I think it was on a Sunday, if I remember right. Over 20 individuals showed up. We talked about a lot of different issues, and as Councilman Elam stated earlier, sometimes we make wrong decisions up here. By voting for this to be C2 opens this area up for whatever. And I've watched the P&Z meeting, listened to the applicant and all. They are on a septic system. There is already issues with the septic system. One of the neighbors is an alderman in the city of Wentzville. He has leakage onto his property, but there's not that many people show up. By moving this to a C2, it's going to open up a world of issues over there. With North Point High School, middle school, and their early childhood center opening up, this road has a tremendous amount of traffic, and currently, we don't have anything in the books to have North Point fixed in this area. It's going to need a lot of work. At this time, C2 would be just devastating to this area. So I will be voting completely against this and not support it. If you guys have any questions later on, we can talk, or if you have questions now, I'll be
I have a
happy.
question. I mean, could they just annex in the city of Wentzville? and
Yes.
C2 zoning?
We had that discussion with the neighbors, and we know that's a total possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I want to say the water and sewer is only around 200 feet away, so that is the next fight that they all know they're going to have to fight.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, we move on to bill number 5330.
Bill number 5330, requested by John Lyons, sponsored by Matt Swanson. An ordinance approving an agreement with the Missouri Department of Transportation to fund the Josephville Road Phase 3 project, resurfacing and adding shoulders to county roads.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, we move on to bill number 5331.
Bill number 5331, requested by John Lyons, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute off-system bridge program agreement, Federal Project BRO-R092003 with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for allocation of funds for replacement of a steel girder bridge on Ober-Hellman Road over a tributary to the Dardine Creek.
Questions, comments on 5331? Seeing none, we'll move on to bill number 5332.
Bill number 5332, requested by John Lyons, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute off-system bridge program agreement, Federal Project BR-R092004 with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for allocation of funds for replacement of the steel girder bridge on Schwady Road over a tributary to the Dardine Creek.
Questions or comments on 5332? Seeing none, we move on to bill number 5333.
Bill number 5333, requested by John Lyons, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute off-system bridge program agreement, Federal Project BRO-RO92005 with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for allocation of funds for replacement of a steel girder bridge on Sneak Road on Callaway Fork of Femme Osage Creek.
Bill number 5333, any comments? Okay, we move on to bill 5334.
Bill number 5334, requested by John Lyons, sponsored by Terry Hollander. An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute intergovernmental agreements with municipal items for road maintenance and repair.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to 5335.
Bill number 5335, requested by Samantha Shadrick, sponsored by Terry Hollander. An ordinance amending the Personal Administration Program, Section 115.710, pay grade assignments to include a new position and budget change related to the Police Department's Bureau of Criminal Investigation and reclassifications and budget changes for positions related to the Department of Road and Bridge.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, the final bill for presentation, introduction is 5336.
Bill number 5336, requested by Tracy Bain, sponsored by Terry Hollander. An ordinance fixing and establishing the rate and levying of taxes for the General Revenue Fund and for various special funds of and for the County of St. Charles, Missouri for the year 2024.
Questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bills for introduction. Is there any bills to be removed from the table? If not, is there any announcements, miscellaneous? Yes.
I just wanted to ask Chief Fritz to please convey to K-9 Bonnie and her family, the Oldanis, our appreciation for her long years of service. I hope she has a long, peaceful, and happy retirement. Thank you.
Yeah, just, well, since we didn't really finish the stormwater discussion, can we put that as a work session for the next council meeting?
I think we can look into it.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
I'd like to congratulate Jared on his first time of going through at CUP. Congratulations. I know that's always a really exciting time. It's like crossing the equator in the Navy, man.
I would request you speak a little bit slower for those of us who are a little hard of hearing.
I would also point at, with Michelle McBride's office, great job on going through this, and I would ask everybody to just be patient. Remember, this is a program that the state legislature dreamed up, came up with, passed it along to the counties to put this thing together, and I've always referred to it as they gave us a half-baked pie and didn't really tell us how to finish baking it. So the collector's office is the one that this really fell on to put together, and you've done a great job of feeling your way through something that is brand new, and to have almost 36,000 applications being handled by 20 people is an amazing job. So I appreciate everybody's patience going through this, and I know next year it will be even better, right? So thanks for all the work you do. And with that, I would motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.
Oh, okay.